Good afternoon. I feel like for once I'm in a room where lots of people already get this. So let's see how it goes. But my job is I edit the Guardian Datastore and Datablog. I'm a news editor on the paper. My first day on the news desk was September the 10th, 2001. And that huge event has just kind of bookended my career in these kind of amazing things that have happened since. And one of the reflections of this has been the sort of enormous growth in data. I have one of those jobs that not many people understand. I've tried to explain it to my parents repeatedly. I just don't really get it. But what I'll do is I'll kind of talk a bit about how we do things and kind of pinpoint some of the stuff that's already around there and out there with data already. So when I was asked to do this, I was thinking, what can I talk about? And I was originally going to talk about how data will change the world. How big data is about to change the world. And it's happening already. This stuff is already out there. Big data, small data, everything in between. And the way that we work as an organisation has completely changed. And one of the things to think about with this is that what we do now as a news organisation has very much altered. So when we started, what we used to do was hand out our pearls of wisdom out to the world. We would print a story and people would gratefully receive that information. That process has completely changed. That's much more two-way. This is the Guardian Datastore, which is what I do every day, working with the news desk. And what we do every day is we share raw data. We publish it using Google spreadsheets, which we do because it's very, very easy to share. Started off as an economic thing because I couldn't get any development resource to build a database. And it's actually turned into quite a useful way to do it. And one of the things to start about is to look backwards. The whole event today is about looking forwards, looking ahead. But actually, a lot of the stuff that we do has kind of real echoes with the past. You can go very, very far back like this, from 1202, which is the Bible as a graphic. And I suppose the difference then is that then graphics and visualisations were a way of kind of getting across information to people who couldn't read. And now we're using them in a sense partly to get across information to people who can't be bothered to read, which is a different thing altogether. But this is the work of a guy called William Playfair. I don't know if anybody's heard of William Playfair. He was an inveterate gambler. He took part in the storming of the Bastille. But he also invented the line chart and the bar chart and the pie chart. All these ways we have of seeing the world now come from a man in the 1780s and really haven't changed much, except obviously now the balance of trade graph goes the other way. Anybody know who this is? Thank you. Normally I have complete silence when I say it. So Florence Nightingale, a lady with a lamp, but also obsessed with statistics and numbers. And when she came back from the Crimean War, she was commissioned to produce a report on the conditions of people in the armed forces. And this report was like a lot of data at the time published as a book, and data and tables and numbers and so on. So she came up with this as a way of visualising that data. Now what that means actually, as I'll explain it for people who can't really see it, is the pink bits in the middle are deaths of soldiers from things you expect soldiers to die of, from being in action, being blown up or whatever. The blue bars are deaths from preventable disease. So it's using kind of data, presenting it in a way that makes it real for people and actually makes a point. And this report caused a storm when it came out, changed the way things work for the British Army, and again changed the world with data. We have a tradition of this in The Guardian too. This is the first edition from May 1821. In those days, adverts were on the front page. And we couldn't do that now for lots of reasons. Then some people would like to be able to do it. And news was on the back. And so this is the first news page of the first ever Guardian. A third of that page taken up with a table of data, a table of numbers. Now that's what would now appear to be incredibly uncontroversial data. It's a list of schools in Manchester, how many pupils they had, and how much funding they got. But in 1821, it was very controversial, not least because it was 60 to 80 years before education became compulsory. A very political thing, and education was done on Sundays because during the week, kids were at work. Of course, some people would like to bring that back too. And the person that leaked it to us, it was leaked information, leaked to us because the official data was rubbish. It was partial, it was compiled by priests, it was you couldn't rely on it. So this idea that actually, if you kind of have the numbers and have statistics, you can know what's going on in the world, and you can improve things, you can make things better. And that's something that kind of flows through what we try and do now. Because now what we have is the same kind of ideas about producing data, but we've suddenly got immense amounts of new ways of presenting that information and presenting it differently. So this is something which we do every year. in the garden. This is government spending by department. Each big circle represents a different government department. Now, if we lived in the States, what we could do is we could ring up the Treasury and they'd give us a nice spreadsheet with all this data in, and we'd just be able to give it to designers, and there you go. But we don't. We live in a country where government departments print their annual reports as PDFs, and anybody who's trying to extract data from PDFs will know how much fun that is. And it's full of kind of interesting bits. So the top left-hand corner is the Department of Work and Pensions, which is our biggest spender. And the bit on the left is benefits. Anybody probably can't see it from here. That biggest benefit circle. Any ideas what that is? It's pensions, exactly. Pensions, which is something people don't even think of as a benefit in some ways. And then down there in the bottom left-hand corner, we've got the Ministry of Defence. And when we were doing the MOD, thought, well, this is odd. There's nothing there for spending in Afghanistan. You know, they must be spending some money over there. And so we rang up the MOD, and the figure wasn't in the official report because it comes with a different budget. It's voted for by Parliament. So we had to kind of bring all this stuff together and put it into one place. And we're in a position to do that as a news organisation. I guess the difference now is that what we'll also do is we'll put that data out there and make it accessible to people and make it and see what other people can do with it and see if other people can do what we do better. And there's loads of people doing this stuff now. This is from Italy. It's poverty kind of broken down by age group. This is the composition of a chromosome. And a lot of these kind of ways are just ways of kind of expressing kind of really interesting information in kind of new ways. This is a really good website, which is an interactive graphic which shows how people move across America and where people move from and to. And I guess what a lot of people are increasingly starting to do now is take these huge bits of data and bring them together in ways which we can kind of understand a bit better. This is the Quran and the Bible and the words used and how they link together and where the kind of commonalities are. And obviously, where we are now is a place where there are huge amounts of data out there. This is some of the great company called ITO World. I don't know if everybody's heard of them. They do kind of transport mapping. And this is a 24 hours worth of flights over Europe. But there are enormous amounts of data out there. I was looking at a report earlier which said there are 2.5 quintillion bytes of data out there every day. Does anybody know what a quintillion is? A quintillion is 1,000 quadrillion, and quadrillion is 1,000 trillion, if that helps. Welcome to my world. But you know, there's enormous amounts of data, and what people are doing is finding increasingly interesting ways of kind of bringing that stuff together. This is another thing that ITO World do, which is another interactive, which is just based on 10 years' worth of road casualty data in the States. They've done the same thing for the UK. And what that allows you to do is actually zoom in and find specific instances, look for things in there and interact with the data. So it's moving away from the idea of just telling people what the numbers say, but actually kind of helping them to find their way through it. This is something which is produced by a fantastic group at Oxford University. They have this very, very small but pretty decent internet institute. A guy called Mark Graham works there. And he specialises now in kind of gathering together geotagged information. Because there's tons of this stuff out there. So this is English language entries on Wikipedia. And they've also done some different languages. You can see how they changed. They've also done the same thing with Flickr photographs and how they're posted. And starting to really kind of get a sense of the amount of information that's out that's geotagged and kind of how you can present it in an interesting way. This is Davos, obviously World Economic Forum, recently, you know, solving the world's economic problems. Obviously, we're all fixed now. But one thing they also talked about was data. Data came up at Davos. There was a whole session on a report published. And it kind of coincides. This is something that a group called Tweetminster did with a PR company called Portland Communication, where they monitored tweets in Africa and who tweets most. And it's an interesting study. This was part of what the Davos report was about. They were looking at mobile phone use in Africa. There's 53% of the population in Africa now have a mobile phone, compared to maybe 0.5% who access the internet via fixed broadband. So you've suddenly got a lot of people out there, and you can monitor that data. So, for instance, you know that if people start having a lot of conversations on Twitter about food, it reflects food price inflation. Or they've also worked out that the change in Twitter use in different parts of the region reflects population change. So these are ways you can use this kind of amazing amount of data that's out there to actually change social policy and change the way that people interact with the world. So one of the things that I suppose motivates us is that there's now so much stuff out there that it's become confusing for people. Where do they start? You've got all this competition. Google's Public Data Explorer, which is a fantastic resource. There's a great company called InfoChimps, which works in the States, and they want to be the kind of YouTube of data. And that's just basically set up by a few developers. These aren't big companies often. Data Market, which was set up in Iceland as a data provider, now moved to the States. And there's a fantastic company which I've just been working I'll look at some of their data this week called Duodo. I know everybody's used them. We've got 20 years' worth of company reports in one website. There's 20 million reports or something. It's an incredible amount of data and information which they've just harvested and pulled together into one place. All this stuff's public, right? But accessing it is often difficult. One of the things we've started to do is start to provide data. So these are a couple of data searches which we offer on our site. The one on the left, World Government Data, brings together open data sites from different countries around the world. So you can search for, crime figures from New York and crime figures from London, maybe start to compare them. And we've done the same kind of thing with A data. So what we've noticed is we're increasingly dealing with bigger data sets, and often they are about really, really, really small things. And specifically about geography, often. So this is something which we did with the indices of multiple deprivation, which is one of these data sets. Comes out every 4 years, incredibly important. It works out how wealthy or poor each part of England is. They don't do it in Scotland and Wales, which is the devolution has played havoc with national statistics. But it's amazing data, but it's published in the worst possible way on the government website. You can't find where you live. It's really hard to find your way around. So we just took that data, and we worked with a GIS specialist at Sheffield University who had the coordinates of each of these little areas. And we put it together using Google Fusion Tables, which is a fantastic map-making resource we use a lot because it's free and easy to use, and you can make quite sophisticated things quite quickly. It allows people to go down to, say, 4 or 5 streets and find out how wealthy or poor they are, which is public information, really important information because it affects everything about public spending in their area. And this is another big data set, which is a little less official. This is WikiLeaks. We had, there were 3 big WikiLeaks releases. Afghanistan, 92,000 records. And if you think of the Pentagon Papers in the 1960s were 7,000 documents, so a huge amount of documents. And then this, which was Iraq, 400,000 documents. And it turns out soldiers are really good at entering data. So one of the things we had was these incidents and casualties by instance. We picked every event where at least one person had died, and using Fusion maps, in about half an hour we made this map, which patterns out every single incident where somebody died in Iraq. And that tells a story much better than thousands of words could do about what was happening there and the kind of the sheer cost of that war. And I was at an event in San Francisco recently. This huge guy came up to me at the end of the event. I had a badge on saying US Army. I thought, well, I'm in trouble now. I had WikiLeaks data set. And he was like, this is fantastic. We've had all this data for ages. We haven't been able to show it to people. We haven't been able to show it to our generals because we haven't had that kind of technology. So you're a busy general. You get a massive spreadsheet stuck in front of you. You don't know where to start. So increasingly what we find is these free tools are giving us access to kind of tell data in new and interesting ways. So one of the things now is there's a huge kind of democratization of data sets and visualizing data sets. And graphic designers hate this because it basically means anybody can do this stuff, which people dislike. And the technology has changed. We've got something like this, the most popular graphic on the web a few years ago, to be able to do stuff like this using Tableau, which is a brilliant kind of free, Tableau Public anyway is free. That's how they suck you in to buy the big one. But actually it's enough to do really sophisticated things like this. And anybody can do this stuff. It's a kind of big democratization of what traditionally people here and we used to do on our own. This is our Flickr group where people every day, quite a small group, but they're very active. They post on visualizations of graphics and things that they've done, and sometimes we post them on the main site. Originally, we didn't have the Flickr group. We just had to find a way to manage this stuff because it was so difficult to work out how to do it. So I'm rapidly running out of time, so I'm going to whiz through what we do have left. So sometimes data can be seen as a threat. Bank of America had to take on 20 lawyers just in case WikiLeaks had anything on them. Turns out they did have a load of documents, but having spoken to people inside WikiLeaks, apparently they were really dull. But it didn't stop Bank of America having to spend a lot of money about it. And then, of course, what you've got are a lot of companies whose entire operations are based on data and the way you use data. So we've had Vodafone, obviously, who kind of monitor every single call and know exactly how their users use work. Google is based entirely on data, and not just in the obvious kind of public data explorer sense, but the way that the search engines work, the smart email boxes and so on. this stuff is just there, and it's part of the way these organisations work. Moving there. So this is, to start with, this is LinkedIn. LinkedIn, in 2008, everybody described themselves as gurus on LinkedIn profiles. In 2009, there are evangelists, evangelicals. I'm an evangelist, data evangelist. In 2010, this is still going on now, the Jedis. LinkedIn knows this stuff about you, and it's how they kind of decide when they're going to create new products. Because all they are is their data. They've got OkCupid, which is a fantastic company, because when people sign up to Guardian Soulmates, unfortunately, we've agreed not to release their data, which is annoying because we can't do stuff like this, which OkCupid does. And they know everything about the people that use the site, everything about the difference between black people and white people and how they describe themselves and so on, and smartphone users. And obviously the social media and the way that it works and the kind of stuff they can tell us has changed too. So these are the degrees of separation between people and how Facebook has changed those degrees, hops, gone from 5 to 4. It's interesting how they take this data every day and they kind of use it and they know what makes us tick. The thing we've dealt with a bit is crowdsourcing, or as we used to call them, surveys. We did it with MPs' expenses, where we had 400,000 pages of PDFs, and we thought, how can we go to this stuff? The Telegraph had this stuff for months because they paid somebody for it, and we didn't have that, so we threw it over to our readers. And we did it twice. This is the second exercise. Second exercise, the whole lot was done in a week, twice over, because we kind of gamified it a bit. We gave people tasks to do, like just do the cabinet or do the shadow cabinet. Make it a bit more fun. First task, people helped us with about 300,000 pages. One person did 29,000 pages. So they probably know more about MP's expenses than our entire Westminster team. This is a company called Zooniverse, who are brilliant at crowdsourcing stuff. And what they do is they take very specific tasks. So they're crowdsourcing photographs of the surface of the moon, see what people can find about. And they're also doing this thing, which is called Old Weather. They're taking old Royal Naval logbooks. And because, what people used to record every day was temperature. So if you've got all these logbooks, you've got the amazing resource of temperature data. And you can start to look at what's happening with climate change. And the other thing they're doing is they make sure that 10 people go through each one. So you kind of lose those errors of judgment that happen otherwise. And this is a company called Kaggle who are interesting. What they do is they kind of crowdsource data development competition. People pay them to find developers who will then kind of build solutions for them. Again, really interesting. Will they make any money from it? I don't know. This is an example of something about how we do stuff. I was just talk briefly through how we ran stuff through the riots, because this was the sort of thing where we didn't have the luxury of time to produce kind of data analysis and use some of these tools. We had to do stuff very, very quickly. So 1981, Brixton riots, very, very different in the sense that we didn't have this kind of flood of information. We had to wait for Lord Scarman to come back and tell us what was going on and what caused it. 2011, we're assaulted with information via Twitter, news, everything. It's just kind of being thrown at us all the time, and assertions by politicians as what's causing what's going on. So what can we do about it? Well, when the riots were happening, we set this up, Google Fusion tables, just a list of verified incidents. Every day we'd update it as soon as reports came through from our reporters or from the Wired. We just add things onto this map. And it just told people what was going on where. Very, very simple. We let people download it as well because the stuff is open. And it was the biggest thing on the site for 3 days in a row. Had maybe about 700,000 page impressions on one page, which is great for Datablog, but it's also a way of, because people are desperate for that kind of basic information. Now, as people started to get arrested, we thought, well, great, we're going to have proper data from the government now. But what they do, though, of course, is they aggregate it. They put it all together. And what we were interested in was the individuals. Who were these people who were out there? Why were they doing this? So we started going after these. These are called the court registers. Every magistrate court has these. At the end of each day, for every person in court, tells you who they are, their ages, their addresses, what they're accused of, and what happened to them each day. And there were loads of questions we had. This was a week after us. A week after people started appearing in court, and we wanted to know, are people being treated more harshly in court? Are they being treated differently to other people in court? And this kind of stuff. We wanted to find out what was going on. So we went to Magistrates Court, said, we'd like all your court registers for the day, please. We went to Camberwell and so on, and they said no. Well, Camberwell actually asked us to pay them £5 for each name, and considering how many people they'd had through it. This is public information, so we went to the Ministry of Justice, and they put an instruction around to every court to release this data. So a week after the event, we had 1,000 records of people who'd been through the court in riot-related cases, which meant we could prove that, actually, 2/3 of people came from very poor places. They were being treated more harshly than people in court. Whether or not you agree with that, it's useful to know that because you want to know how the justice process is actually working, especially when so many people are kind of being bunked to the court. And then we were inspired by the Detroit riots project. In the late 60s, big riots in Detroit, people died, it was a big thing, and a guy called Phil Mayer went out and interviewed people who were actually involved in the riots, found out why they did this. So we used that database as a way to go out and interview people and find people involved in the riots. And we asked them important questions like, was it Twitter? Did Twitter cause the riots? Which, as you know, Twitter was blamed for the riots. Actually, what we found is most people found out about the riots, the people who went out there, from TV, old media, right? And we did stuff like this, monitoring hashtags. And that big one at the end is riot cleanup, which shows how Twitter was actually used by people as a way to tell them what was going on. We did this as well, where we mapped, with ITOWorld, we mapped where people lived and where they were accused of rioting. And they modelled how people went from one place to the other. This is London. In London, people lived a lot closer to where they were accused of rioting. In Manchester, which is here, people came from miles away to come to the town centre. Now, partly because London is full of high streets, right? So London is, you know, you're never too far from a high street. Manchester's different. We also looked at rumours on Twitter. The green dots are the rumours starting. Red dots are rumour being squashed. That was the rumour that London Eye was on fire. Well, it turns out you can't burn metal, so it wasn't. There's another rumour that there was a children's hospital in Birmingham which was being attacked by riots. See that green, it's starting, and then people start to squash the rumour down at the end and squash it. So it's how social, you know, people used to talk about, you know, Mark Twain said a lie can be around the world before the truth got its boots on. And with Twitter, you think that's going to be more true. Actually, the truth can bomb round right after it and make sure people really know what's going on. So next stage of this project is that we're going to go the other side of the barricades and talk to people who were on the front lines of the police officers and the people in the courts and see what they thought, why they thought the riot started, and their kind of experiences of the whole process as well. So this is something I was going to bring up too.
In fact, there are now over 3.1 million millionaires, but these are not the richest of all. The U.S. has over 400 billionaires, more than any other country in the world. Who's at the top of that pile? These three have a combined net worth of $131 billion. That's just over the combined budget shortfall of every state in the U.S. for 2011. More than the cost of the global war on terror in 2010.
So that's actually something we did very recently around the 99% versus 1% debate. And it's quite a traditional method, using a video and showing that information. Now, I suppose what I'm kind of gearing up to say is actually, although there's 150 years between something like this and something like this, the distance between what we're trying to do is very, very similar. And what we have now is this amazing amount of information out there to do it, and that amazing capability of presenting information in ways we never could before. Thank you very much.